Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk with Tonsoni. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni, and today we'll have a preview of our coverage of Indiana University Baseball. Together with an awesome cast of IU baseball fans, we will bringing you somewhat regular podcasts featuring IU baseball discussions. And for even more IU baseball information, please visit iubase.com and follow their Twitter account, which is at IUBase. So, let's get started talking Indiana baseball. I'm glad to introduce our group of diehard fans. I'm Brian Tonsoni. I'm a season ticket holder. I live a couple hours away. I try to make it to about 18 to 20 games in all tournament games if I can. First of all, we will introduce Chris Feeney. Chris, if you'd introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Indiana baseball means to you and what you're going to do for the podcast and website.
Thanks, Brian. And before we even start, I want to thank you for helping us out with this and getting these podcasts rolling. It's a big help, and I look forward to doing them through the season.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
All right. My name's Chris Feeney. We're doing work on iubase.com, and we started up the IUBase Facebook fan group last year, and now we got the website added on. We have the Twitter account, and we're just trying to – it's kind of a for fans, by the fans kind of thing. Just trying to get information out. We haven't really found too much that's strictly IU baseball. You know, it's kind of part of Indiana sports, so it's basketball, football, everything else. And we just wanted to try to focus just on baseball. You know, it's a unique, diehard fan base that I've noticed since I moved out here, and I think this is really working out well. I hooked up with Josh through Twitter. I hooked up with Brian and Carl through Twitter, and before we knew it, we're communicating, with each other about it, and now we can get this information out to others. And there's a need for it. We definitely think there's a need for it. So here we are.
And also introducing Josh Bennett, who is the editor. I believe we're going to give you the title or whatever you want to call yourself with the website. But talk a little bit about what Indiana baseball, why you're a fan, and what you plan to do for the website and podcast.
Josh Bennett, live in Bedford, Indiana. A big IU baseball fan. IU baseball and basketball both, but baseball's my passion at every level. And I guess I'm kind of the editor of the website. Chris and I put it together and built it, and continuing to do that. I guess that's it.
And it's a little bit of a time-consuming job, but it's a lot of fun when you have something that you're interested in. And our last panelist today is Carl James, and Carl is an expert in many things, and we'll let you tell him what he brings to the IU Base website. Carl, welcome to the show.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, I'm Carl James. I'm a huge fan of IU baseball, and also IU women's basketball is my other thing that I'm into. I got hooked watching the Hoosiers in the Big Ten tournament a few years ago. And then, between Twitter and the IU-based hashtag and meeting all these guys, it's been a lot of fun. I focused my area of interest on strength of schedule and how that impacts qualifications for postseason play. And I kind of go down that rabbit hole even farther all the time. And I've enjoyed writing about that for the new website as well.
And you can see some of Carl's work on the website already with some of schedule analysis and some of the things that IU baseball needs to do as far as a win total to maybe host and definitely get into the tournament. So those are some interesting articles. Also, this year will be joining us is Cassidy Palmer. I have her last name correct. I hope that she lives out of state and does a great job tracking statistics. So when you see statistics on the website or in our podcast, they're going to come from Cassidy. We really appreciate her work and her love of Indiana baseball. For me, it's Bart Kaufman Stadium. And what a wonderful place to watch a baseball game. Loved baseball. Had checked out a few IU baseball games when I was in town in the spring at the old venue. But this new ballpark is just an incredible place for family and fans. And then the baseball product has been outstanding in the last 4 or 5 years too, as well as the new stadium. So together, all of us, we will be providing some insight and commentary from the bleacher section. And as fans, we're not part of the program. We don't have a whole lot of insight, but we are excited about this season and believe that this podcast can add to your enjoyment as well. So let's get started a little bit with the preview. Chris, if we could come to you and talk a little bit about at times when we can, we might do some post-game reviews real quick from the parking lot. That'll be part of these podcasts. Talk about some of the ideas that we have going forward for our podcast listeners.
Well, I think it's important. I know there's not really much of a post-game. There's not much post-game stuff that you can jump right into after the game ends. And so what we're going to try to do is give some instant reaction, fan reaction from the parking lot most of the time for the home games, and see, if the technology works out right, maybe we can do it also for the road games, from our homes or from wherever we're checking out the game. And just to give people an opportunity, maybe that weren't able to watch, they can hear what happened, the highlights, stuff like that. And will it happen every single game? Can't guarantee that, but we're going to do our best to get the information out. And, I'm looking forward to it, because I can tell you plenty of times when I walked out of the bar, to be able to hear some analysis, to be able to hear, a little bit more than what they provide on the radio, if there's a call that day. I think it's important, and I really look forward to doing it.
And we can get those out possibly close to the end of the game, but we also can edit those into our weekly podcast as a segment of review for the week. And we look forward to reviewing what happened in IU baseball over the weekend and a look ahead to the matchups throughout the season when we can get together for this podcast. Josh, talk a little bit about what the listeners may find on the IU Base website, some of the pages and maybe some of the articles that are already there.
We've got, your basic things. We've got a schedule and standings, and hopefully we'll have the roster up soon. But like you and Chris were just talking about, we'll have podcasts up from us, the fans. We've got a page with Carl and Cassie's incredible stats. There are already quite a few articles put up on there, recaps of last year and some things looking for the future this year. And then we've also got a page up for recruits, future Hoosiers, and what high schools they're playing at, so you can find where to check them out before they show up at Bart. And then we've also got an alumni page, former Hoosier baseball players. You can find out what organization they're in, and then we'll update that with Twitter feeds here when the season begins.
And Josh, I think as fans, I think they're going to really like to see the content that you and Chris have started and developed, and already the articles there are very informative. And I think you're going to get a great following from inside the baseball program too, the players and their families. And it's nice to give recognition to those guys who starting in fall ball work, and then they've been practicing here inside and outside, getting ready for the first game in mid-February. So it's an outstanding website to our listeners. If you're an Indiana baseball fan, please go to iubase.com. And so I'm going to skip a little bit here to go right to Carl's segment. Then we'll come back to the actual team and what we think of the team. But Carl, you've written a couple articles about the schedule strength and the RPI. If you could just share, how do you develop these numbers and work these numbers, and then how does that specifically play to this IU baseball team in 2018?
Okay. Well, I started doing this in 2016, specifically about 2/3 of the way through the season. There was a weird situation that was possible to happen, which is that Indiana had a chance to win the Big Ten title, but they had an RPI rank in the 100s. So I wanted to take a look at predicting what would Indiana's RPI in various scenarios be like at the end of the season, because it only really matters a couple hours before selection day what that RPI means as far as whether they're going to get into the tournament. So I basically did one thing that was different than what you see like on a site like Warren Nolan, which tells you, it gives you all the information for the season and the future, but calculates your RPI right there. So if it's April 15th, it's going to tell you right where you rank. What I did was say, you know what? We know who they're going to play for the next month. Let's just add those teams' current wins and losses to the mix, and then try to figure out, based on what we can guess the wins and losses are going to look like, where they're going to land. In 2016, that kind of told me that, this team's going to have to win the Big Ten tournament in order to make it to the postseason. So I did the same thing last year, and which was giving much more positive results because the teams we were playing against were all winning games, which was really awesome. And this year, I simply have taken the 2017 numbers and applied those to the 2018 schedule. And when I put it through the numbers, I came up with that IU is likely to need about 40 wins in order to get to the postseason, which is more than what they've achieved in the past. But this is a weaker schedule, and I think 40 wins is actually something that can almost be counted on from this team. And then 5 more puts them in range, I think, along with a league title, in order to possibly bring a regional to Bart Kaufman Field, which would be absolutely awesome.
And Carl, as for some of my listeners know, I'm also part of Delphi Bracketology. We do the basketball study too. It's a lot about what your opponents do, and sometimes there's some surprises. Some teams on the schedule that we think are weak have a good season that would help our RPI, and the opposite's true as well, as teams we think are going to be strong, if they have a few injuries or struggle, and then that hurts our RPI. So it's weird that you have to root for your schedule, except when you play them, right? You want almost everyone on your schedule to do well, so your RPI. That's always is weird to me.
Yep. And last year we have unfortunately, a lot of thanking to do for the Purdue Boilermakers. They had a huge turnaround last year, and that helped us huge.
Yeah. And we don't like to say that, but that's the truth. So look for our listeners and then Indiana baseball fans, look to the website. We'll continue to update the RPI where it is, and also the predictions throughout the year and what needs to happen for our Indiana Hoosiers to make it to the tournament. So let's go, fellas, into this year's team. We don't have a roster yet, and so we can't really go down the roster. Maybe we'll do that in 2 or 3 weeks, right before the season starts. We can do that. But let's talk a little bit about what you guys think about the pitching staff as we know it. And we'll start with Chris, and then we'll go to Josh and Carl, and then I'll try to wrap up some thoughts about pitching. But Chris, tell us what you look forward to, or you think is going to happen with our pitching staff this year.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, we have a roster. We just don't know the freshmen. We know
the
seniors, we know the juniors, we know the JUCO transfers, we know the sophomores. And that's good news, because that's a lot of arms coming back. That's the entire starting rotation, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's our closer. That's most of our bridge guys. Herron, Crisco, Sal Frank could be used there if he's not doing the midweek games. Stever's Friday, Milto's Saturday, and from what it looks like, Cal's going to be Sunday. I know there was some talk about him might do some closing work, but from what I understand, it's going to be Lloyd again. And those are some arms coming back. Those are arms that usually don't have this much experience as sophomores and juniors. And I really got to thank Limo, Coach Lamonis. With that freshman class, outstanding. Now they're all sophomores. They're all experienced. They've been to a regional, played some close, pressurized games in the Big Ten tournament. And, did all the Big Ten games the way we wanted? No. But, it's still experience. Look at the way the staff pitched against Louisville that night at the Bart. And we're bringing all these arms back. And I think it can be a really special season. Not too many teams that were a number 2 regional, number 2 seed in the regional are bringing back the entire rotation, most of the bridge guys, and the closer. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it could be real special due to the pitching.
Josh, you went to a few of the games in the fall, right? The scrimmages.
Yeah.
Who stood out on the mound for you that looked good from the bleachers as we find ourselves?
I think John Stever. He was hitting 95 almost every other inning, which we haven't seen him. He was low 90s. So he impressed on the mound. Some of the new guys some of the freshmen that we didn't know who they were at the time, because we didn't know what their numbers, we didn't have a roster. Some of those guys looked really good. I'm not sure which ones they were. But Paulie didn't look too bad.
I heard Beecham's velocity went up. Do we know that? Did we see that, or
I don't think I ever saw him pitch.
Okay.
Him and Cal were two guys that I didn't get to see.
So I don't know where I read that or I thought I saw that somewhere. And, competition is going to be great because, usually I don't know baseball strategy. We can talk. Do you want to throw a left-hander in there on a weekend? And we've had some left-handed guys that Chris mentioned. If any of those jump up and can move into a weekend start or maybe just do the weekday starts. Carl, your thoughts on our pitching staff as it seems to us fans from the bleachers?
Well, I can answer the one question you have. I actually did see Beecham pitch once in the fall. Okay. And I mean, I don't remember what he was hitting as far as velocity goes, but he was getting guys out. And most importantly, he was throwing strikes, which was, as a freshman, that was something that he had some struggle with. So we can take some of these guys that were freshmen last year and occasionally, it was a lack of consistency last year. So when you had a lot of these younger guys that were in a bullpen role, there was a lack of consistency there just because they hadn't done it at this level at a large level. And I think you're going to see an improvement in that. Also, I'm really excited to see what happens in the midweeks. I think that was an area last year that was a problem for Indiana because the depth wasn't there in pitching. So you add all of this experience, and I think that makes Tuesday and Wednesday games a lot more winnable for this club. Which, granted, isn't going to help the Big Ten season, but I think it will help the team overall, and also maybe allow the best relievers to be saved for the weekend series. And not feel like you need to burn, a guy like Tim Herron. You don't need to use him on Tuesday and Wednesday because you got plenty of other arms that can get you through a midweek.
Carl, I think that's a great point. I think you made two great points. One, depth is great because if you have really good pitchers on that midweek or those midweek games, you don't have to stress out the bullpen or anyone for the weekend. And also, wins matter. You might not be playing as quality of teams in the midweek, but you don't want to lose those games to help with the 40 win mark. Any of you see anyone? And I know again the freshmen and those guys, we don't know names yet, but was any talk or any thought about any newcomers that might make an impact? And I'll just throw that out to anyone.
Well, I know Grant Sloan, the transfer. There was a lot of talk about him. I only saw him pitch the one time in the fall, and it wasn't his best day on the mound. But I know there's a lot of talk that fill in possible midweek starter. He was with the club last year, but he was redshirted because of the transfer. That's Grant Sloan. Mm-hmm. And I know as far as, up and coming, I don't think there's no way any of them are going to slide into starting roles. It would be more bullpen, long relief, stuff like that. I mean, these starting jobs are filled.
Okay. Anybody else have someone that we haven't mentioned that might be a surprise on the mound for us? I think we might know that more after we see what happens in the first 2 or 3 weeks, probably.
Yeah. I've got a question. If anybody can chime in, who do we think is going to be the primary midweek starter?
Frank.
Okay.
I would.
Or Beecham.
Guess that. Yeah, Beecham. Beecham might be used a lot in the pen.
Yeah. Well, and it also might depend on the weeks where it's whether it's 1 or 2 midweeks, because we've got a few dual midweek weeks this year. So we may need them both.
A lot of our guys had good summer gigs wherever they went. And I wish I had the stats. I should have prepared better. But whether it's the Cape or other leagues, I think our guys had some really good outings, which will bode well and add experience on the mound.
Well, Stever especially, he led the Cape in walk-to-strike ratio, a whole league. Now, he didn't pitch as many innings as others, but for the innings that he did pitch, he led the league in strikeout-to-walk ratio.
I'm a basketball guy, but I think defense wins in basketball, and I think you have to have really good pitching, especially if you get into that tournament like, we all went down to Lexington last year. You got to have some depth of pitching to go through that and win. So hopefully that's a strength for us, and the experience that these young guys got last year will pay off. So let's go talk about the offense, and this is just a great a great offensive team. I think maybe not as good as the Bash brothers of a few years ago, but I think we're going to see some balls hit hard and leave the park all year long. So, Josh, who's your favorite IU offensive player, or who do you think is going to have the best year?
Wow. I think the obvious answer would have to be Logan Sowers. He ended last season, and in fall ball, he was working a lot going to right field, which I think will take care of one of his biggest weaknesses, which is strikeouts. He works on driving ball the other way and not trying to jerk everything over the scoreboard. I think he'll cut down on his strikeout ratio big time. So, I would have to say.
That's a great point of, I always wonder about two-strike approach. And I marvel at those professional hitters that when they get to 2 strikes, they want to hit the ball hard. And lately in baseball, it's been, we're going to swing for the fences no matter what the count is. And if he is trying to go to right field, you'll see his average, you'll see his production go up. That's a great catch right there, I think, from one of our better hitters. Carl, let's go to you. Who do you think is going to have a great year? Who's your guy to watch?
I'm looking at Jeremy Houston. I think he kind of was under the radar last year. He's going to be towards the bottom of the lineup, but I think the bottom of the lineup can make a huge impact. And if you look at the last couple of years when IU has done well, it was guys in the past like Brian Wilhite who made it to where that where there is a danger to any opposing team no matter where you are in that lineup. And I think Jeremy Houston's a guy who's not only he's fast and he can get on base, but he's actually starting to hit with power now too. So I'm really looking to see how much of an impact. He may not be the best hitter on the team, but he may be able to just really damage the opposing team because he's hitting in a slot that maybe the other team's overlooking.
I tell you what, this podcast is off to a great start because as the coach, there's always good things that Josh picks up going to right field. I like that. And Carl talks about, sometimes it's not the statistical leader that really impacts your team. And I think that's a great comment about the bottom of the order. You get hits and you turn that inning around and you get to the top of the lineup, and that's how you put crooked numbers up. And you put stress on the other team. Jeremy Houston, I just love watching him play defense at shortstop. I think he's so fun to watch, and it would be great to see him have a little more pop at the bottom of that lineup. But yeah, I like the way he plays a lot. And now, the pressure's on you, Chris. I mean, that's 2 for 2 with our panelists here with some great insight. So don't commit an error here. But it's to you. Who's your offensive guy?
To me, Lloyd, Miller, and Sowers are givens for the middle of the order. So I'm looking at Gorski. He's surprised. I mean, he put Scatman, he sat him down. He took over the first base job. Now, that might be Bradley's job this year. Gorski might be in the outfield, left field, or whatever. But he does everything. I mean, he can bunt. He gives the guy over. He's a clutch hitter. If Gorski can actually even be better than he was last year, you're going to add him to that middle of the order. I could see him batting 6th. I could see him batting 3rd. I'm big on Gorski. I think he really lengthened this lineup. And like Carl said, you got Jeremy batting 9th, the double leadoff thing. I thought that was a great move, having him usually do that. It looks like a newcomer Logan Coletto leadoff. So, you got speed. Gorski can really lengthen this lineup out. And I'm looking forward to it.
I think his speed adds a dimension. I love that he would bunt for hits every once in a while and then put pressure on the base pass. He's moving to the outfield, isn't he? Correct?
Sounds like it. But he might play a little first. Bradley might play a little first. Real multiple. I was writing up the capsules for the roster. They're not up there yet, but I've been working on them. And it's like you don't know where to say somebody is in the lineup. You're not definite what position, and that's a good thing. Because it's going to be multiple. We're going to have different lineups. We're going to have different defense. It's a lot of options this year, and that, to me, only leads to good things.
Well, and I'm going to you talked about the Sowers, Miller, Lloyd. Those guys are key. What a solid middle of the lineup. I go Lloyd, we leave out Miller. If I go Miller, we leave out Lloyd. And so what are our fans on the first one going to say? I tell you what, I love Miller. I think if you watched, I went to the Purdue series, and every time he makes an out, he's just disgusted when he comes back to the dugout. And that kind of fiery attitude, I love that because, in baseball, you're going to make out 6-7 times out of 10. He doesn't want to. And so as long as he doesn't take that out to the field, I love that kind of attitude. And we can go down. Feynman is, I think, going to have some pop in his junior year as well as his defensive duties. So let's talk a little bit about second base. We lost Tony Butler. Who's going to fill in second base? I'll let the first guy who wants to chime in there. Who we got there at second base?
The mystery.
I think I think probably Kobar from what we saw in fall ball. I would say probably Kobar, and Justin Walker is the freshman coming in. I'm sure he'll make the roster. Is just as silky smooth defensively as Jeremy is. I think that's your future middle infield is going to be Walker and Houston, and there will be a ton of double plays turned between those two. So I'd say my guess would be Kobar and Justin Walker.
And where's Scotty Bradley going to play coming back from a year of injury?
I'm here in first base or outfield. Maybe even a little of both.
Mm-hmm. And we can run several of those guys through the DH too, as needed.
I think try to keep Lloyd there though, because with the closing duties.
That's right.
He might play some second base too.
Yeah, Josh, I was just going to ask. I saw where he played a little second base.
From what I read, it didn't go exactly how they wanted. Again, maybe it's the person writing it. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I did read a little bit about that. I actually saw him at first base one night, and he looked pretty good. His footwork was good. He didn't seem lost, but I think it's just, we have so many guys who can play so many spots, and we're so deep. Like you're saying, this team, is not the Bash Brother team. It might be deeper than that team, though.
Seriously, talk about Logan Kalitha. I don't know much. He's from Michigan City. I'm from LaPorte. That's the neighboring towns up in the region. Transfer in, correct, outfielder. Someone give us some insight on Kalitha.
From what I've heard, center field going to be put right in the lineup. Speed. He's got a good arm in the outfield. Power bat. This is a player. This is a definite player.
And we got Eustace back, too, who could play some outfield.
Oh, yeah.
So this team's deep.
That's what I'm saying. It might not have the Bash Brothers, but it might be deeper.
And you hope that there aren't any injuries, but if there is, it seems like on the mound and in the batter's box, we have some people who can step in. So that's a little bit to our listeners. We'll know more as the preseason comes, and as the first series of games, we'll talk some results and stuff. But now I go through the panel for final thoughts, either about the podcast, the website, Mark Kauffman Stadium. Share with some listeners some thoughts about what the IU baseball season coming up is going to be to you, and then we'll wrap up this podcast. So let's start with Josh. What are you looking forward to this year, and your final thoughts on this opening podcast?
Well, I'll say I'm just looking forward to seeing the team in action and who actually makes it, the freshmen who actually makes the team, because there were a lot of good players, and some of them will not be here, and they very easily could be playing. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys have been weeded out. And also one thing I'd like to say that I didn't mention before about the website, we've been collecting fan stories. So if you want to send those to us, you can send them to us on the website. We've got a contact page on there, and if there's anything with the site that you don't like or that you see that needs changed, you can also contact us on the contact page there, and we look forward to feedback.
Those fan stories are awesome. The first couple that have been put out, they're Mark Kauffman Stadium and Indiana Baseball provide a lot of family memories, and so let's send those in iubase.com. So thanks, Josh. Carl, your final thoughts on this opening podcast?
Well, we've got a video board coming, and I just saw on Twitter that DJ Unique was talking about putting together some music with the that goes with the individual player intro videos. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. My daughter, I go to a lot of the games with my daughter, and a big deal for her is the walk-up songs that the players have, and figuring out which songs they're going to have, and it's a big deal to her. So I always pay attention to that as well, and it's a great fan experience, and that's one piece of it, the music and getting to know what the players like, and it's just a lot of fun. So it's one of those things that is part of that overall experience.
And I think you can find Carl on the third base side. I've seen you several times down in the first couple of rows behind the Indiana dugout. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's typically where we are. We're usually right behind the dugout. I'm not 100% sure that we're gonna stick there, but I think we'll probably start there for the year, and we'll see how it goes.
And let's go back, Josh. Where do you locate yourself and your family when you go to these games?
We were about the same, a little bit more towards home plate, but about the first or second row on the dugout there next to Carl. But I have a 10-month-old now, so we kind of moved back behind the screen. But now that they've extended it, we might move back.
Very good. And final thoughts from Chris on this upcoming season.
Well, I'm definitely excited to get to the ballpark. I was not even get to a practice this weekend, but the field couldn't get cleaned up in time. Maybe next weekend. I just love being there. It was a big part of my life in New York. I came out here and to be able to experience games, and it's familiar. It's something I really love doing, and met a lot of great people. I mean, 3 of you guys are on here right now, and there's plenty others. And to me, this team has a different relationship with the community than the other sports do. Maybe it's because of just the environment of the ballpark. Maybe it's because it's not as student fan driven. It's more community fan driven. And I really think that's a big staying point for this team's fan base. And listen, I just miss being at the ballpark. Hey, it's all fun and good, but I want to go to the game.
Where can fans find you? Where do you pull up space or spots when you go to the BART?
Well, I like to move around. I usually kind of set up pretty close to the home dugout, though. You can see me walking around the hill, though. I like getting pictures from different aspects of the park. If we're losing, I will move. That kind of, I just usually, though, it's pretty close to the home dugout. I like being able to hear the things and see the things that you just can't see further back. It's fun, man. You guys interacting with each other, stuff like that. Just wanted to throw one thing in. We called Josh the editor. He did a lot more than just edit some pieces. He built it.
Yeah, that's right.
He pushed it. He pushed to get it put up, and created it basically. So let's give Josh a little more credit than just editor. He one day there it was. The pages were built, everything was set up, and I just have to put some words in, and he does the hard part. So definitely more than just the editor. And I wanted to thank Carl. The stuff he does, it's not easy. He's building charts, and sometimes I'm just hitting retweet on Twitter. That's easy.
Yeah.
Carl and Cassie with her stats. It's not easy stuff. And yeah, it's for the fans, by the fans, but it takes a little work too. And I think it's a good thing. And again, I thanked you in the beginning, but I'll thank you again for this. This came from talking about, Kentucky or at the football tailgates, and here it is. We're doing it. And I think it's a great thing.
And my final thought is it's very close to baseball season, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm a basketball coach. I love coaching basketball, but baseball, and especially baseball at Bart Kaufman Stadium, is fantastic. And thanks to the program and the coaching staff, it is a family feel when you go to Bart Kaufman. I am a standing room only guy. I'm back behind the dugout. I'm the big fat guy, right behind the dugout, standing in the back. So if you see any of us at our locations, come up and talk to us. Tell us what you'd like to hear on these podcasts. Tell us what you'd like to see on the webpage. We just want to support Indiana baseball and help our fans have a little bit of entertainment that hasn't been there in the past. So that'll do it for our first IU baseball show on Sports Talk with Tonsoni. Again, follow IU Base at IU Base on Twitter and IUBase.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the Sports Talk with Tonsoni, you can find that on iTunes, Google Play. My Twitter account is at SportsTons. And please let us know what you'd like to hear. So this is Brian Tonsoni for the wonderful panel. I am signing off. This has been another episode of Sports Talk with Tonsoni. Thanks. Have a great day.